Okay, well, here's a master class on painting a Ravenwing biker. Yeah, let me get my camera set up first. A Ravenwing biker. Now, for this model, I will be using a set of paints called Andrea Paint, Andrea Color. You can get the Andrea Color Black, which is a series of 6 paints. It starts with a base, goes through 3 shadows, and then 2 highlights. So, I'll be using these paints to do this tutorial. The first step is going to be using the base. You see, they're identified on their on the pot. A 50-50 mix between base and first shadow. So what I'm going to do is just pour a dollop onto my palette here, and then get my first shadow and try and pour an equal dollop. That looks about right. I know you can't see it on there, but that's okay. And then I'm going to mix it with my mixing brush, my Reaper Kolinsky number 2 brush. I mixed up a good amount because I'm going to do several layers of this. Then I'm going to mix more into this um, for the first shadow. So, okay, this is the base coat. So now I'm going to paint the whole model with this. I previously painted the model using Army Painter um, Uniform Gray. It's a nice neutral gray. Other options would have been to hand paint it with Codex Gray or its new GW Paint alternative. So now here we go. I'm going to just paint this guy using this gray color. Pretty much everything except for like the metal parts, the trim. I'm going to paint with this. It's probably going to take a couple of applications of this gray. So yeah, I'll be painting up from a gray tone. I'm not going to do all this base coating on camera. Um, there's no need for that. But what I wanted to do was just kind of introduce and show you uh, the steps. This is a Dark Vengeance biker. I see there's a nub there I forgot to clean off. All right, since this is just a tedious part, the base coating, I'm not going to show it any more of this. I wanted you just to see it, what I'm doing. Get the whole thing painted, leave the trim gray. Get the rest of it painted with your 50-50 mix between base and first shadow. It's probably going to take a few layers of this, a few coats. So take your time. Do a good job. I'll be back in a few. All right, so here we are. The model has been base coated. Um, I left all the trim, just the Codex gray, the neutral gray from the spray. I wasn't all that careful about the trim. I hit it here and there. That's fine. I'm gonna paint that with my non-metallic Jawa gray anyway later on, so that doesn't matter at all right now. That's all gonna be done afterwards. And yeah, so here it is. This was a Andrea Paint 50-50 mix of base coat and first shadow. I'm just doing some touch up as I speak to you. Some areas I missed. I could probably have stood to put a little bit more of the darker of the two into my mix to make my base even darker, but that's okay. It looks good. Next step is to go darker. So now we're going to go with shadow number 2. Where's my shadow number 2? Do, do. That's third shadow. Where's shadow number 2? First shadow. Second shadow. Here it is, second shadow. So it's basically a 50-50 mix of second shadow. I've got a pretty large area of paint here. And I'm going to pour a fairly large amount of this paint into it. And then mix it up. I'm only going to mix it with like half the paint I had in this pot, in this circle here. Pull in what I need if I need. In fact, yes, I will just mix it all up. And I'm also going to throw some glazed medium in there to dilute it a little bit. Okay. By the way, this is my first time ever doing this. nothing like teaching you guys some basic painting for the first time of my own trying. I've done similar stuff to this. And I know how it works, but I figured I would show you the Jawaballs way, and sometimes just winging it is the way. So now I'm going to paint this using my feathering technique into the recessed areas. For example, I'm going to drop some of this in here. You want to leave the rounded parts kind of lighter. For example, the light hits right here and goes down the side of this round leg. So I'm going to leave that lighter gray, kind of shadow around it. Can you see what I'm doing there? It's kind of hard to tell sometimes. I will be doing a darker shadow, so don't worry too much if you don't quite get a very dark shadow with this layer. Remember when I paint, I use the tip of the brush pointing into the shadows. I left this area, this peak, a little bit lighter. So again, I'm pushing this shadow into the recessed areas, leaving the ridges the lighter gray. Dragging it down through the middle of the arbor plates, but leaving the ridges. All right, this step is fairly straightforward here. Just dropping this first shadow in, leaving the ridges exposed. So I'm going to finish this up and come back in a few. All right, more to come. All right, well, here he is. I know you can't really see much of the shading at this point. It's a very subtle step. Now we're going to go with the next shadow, which is adding some of the third shadow in to my mix I already have, 50-50. And with this one, you got to be precise. Much more precise than you were in the previous two. You know what? I'm going to start a whole new little pot here because I have so much gray. It's hard to get a good mix. So what I'm doing is just I put another dollop of paint into another pot here, and now I'm scooping an equal amount of my original gray into it, then mixing it. I'm going to throw a little bit more of the third shadow in there. All right, let's do it. So now this is where you got to have some precision here. Same thing. You're just going to push this gray into the deepest shadows and feather it out. This should probably be done over several applications. Here's where you gotta take your time and be a painter. But up to this, I was just kind of rushing before this point. Don't try and complete this shadow all at once. Take your time. Multiple coats. This is probably the most important step. Fine detail brush. Be real precise. Can you see? How are you doing over there? And here I'm starting in the areas that are recessed and just dragging it up. But again, avoiding those edges, avoiding the peaks. Just painting in the valley here. Here I am feathering it out, putting it into the shadow, then pulling it out. This step will really make your shadow stand out. Without any highlighting at all. Saliva is your friend. If you get too much, you can always use saliva to erase it. My reason for doing this, well, there's a couple. First, I wanted to challenge myself to something new. But also, the point of my videos is for you guys to be able to pick them up and learn something. And if I can't show you myself learning as I work, how can you guys be expected to do it? So really, I'm just demonstrating what you're doing yourself right now by learning as you go. Right now, I'm actually just following a tutorial I saw online. I emailed the guy to see if he wanted me to give him some cred, but he never responded, so no cred for him. Now, a little disclaimer here. I'm doing this kind of on the fast because I could probably spend 2 hours just doing this part. But I want to paint something here for this tutorial that you guys aren't going to kill yourself trying to reproduce. So I'm doing this in a way that I hope will look good, but at the same time, you guys can emulate. I don't expect any of you to put in the sheer amount of hours that I would normally put into a project like this. That's crazy talk. Working my way back around to my first layers. Not for his head. Time for precision. It's kind of hard to be precise painting on the camera. Do the shoulder pads. I'm not touching the roundest part of the shoulder pad. All right, I'm going to finish them up. I'm going to go through and do another layer of this and come back and show you the final part for the shading.